Hey guys, welcome back. In this video, we are talking about the AMC GME volume glitch, why it's a huge win for apes, the AMC 4X, and many more in this video. Firstly, we've been seeing some glitches happening for AMC and GME again. You can see short pops AMC back up from 5 million in volume to over 31 million in volume after hours, but drops GME volume only down to 3,547. And this wasn't only it. So not only are we seeing this massive volume change on swap, but you can also see a disparity between the GME volume here versus the GME volume on Google Finance, where it actually showed 41 quadrillion in terms of volume for GME. Now, once again, every time we see glitches happening, it always happens to AMC and GME. Whether it's market cap, whether it's shares outstanding, or the volume here, there has been so many glitches that is happening. Now, it's not a surprise that this is happening, especially with what's happening with GME recently. We've obviously talked about this acquisition, and they've yet to announce it and why it's going to be extremely big. It's definitely brought a lot of attention over, and it's going to bring that volatility, and perhaps is why we're seeing this volume happening, and it could explain a lot of what has happened in the past as well, because this could be talking about the total volume of all the synthetic shares that are being traded as well. You can also see here, you gotta realize by now the wrongdoers of these market shorting AMC are royally stuck here. We've seen 0% moves for months and months and months, with over 80% off exchange daily. We already know this price ain't real. And so what's interesting is the fact that we're seeing the volume for AMC obviously rapidly changing, but we're also seeing how the off exchange for AMC is still extremely high. You can see here 82%. Now, once again, I want to use an example of how off exchange has obviously damaged the AMC, and why every time we do see off exchange being used this much, it just shows how desperate these short sellers are. And again, it just goes back to this recent time, and it happened in January. And you guys can see here, AMC had two particular green days on the 9th of January and on the 12th of January. Now, you guys can check this for yourself. But during this time, what we actually saw was the dark pool exchange was still extremely high, but it was only at 60%. Now, it's ridiculous to say 60% is, only, but when you compare it to what happens with AMC, this is a small change. Now, what we saw here was the day we were up 13% and the day we were up 5.49%, AMC saw 60% off exchange. And right after that, after they saw the fact that AMC went up by over 18%, the next day we were met with a 70% plus going in towards 80%. And then after that, what we saw was off exchange constantly hitting 80s, even that days hitting close to that 90% mark. And the big reason for this is what we talked about. We already had a sell of short sellers who were stacking their positions up around this 210, essentially the $2 area. And so as they see the price close towards that area, they are going to see liquidity stress problems. And that's why we saw this dark pool increase. Once again, these are data that you can obviously go check for yourself. We've shown this data in the past as well. And this is something that we have seen. And so when we talk about the volume, when we talk about the dark pool, there's a big reason for why this is happening. And if you want to dig further, you can see high short interest for AMC, high FTDs for AMC. So far, we've already seen the glitches happening for the AMC volume. We're looking at 82% in the dark pool. And we're also seeing the spike in the short interest and the FTDs for AMC. And today we're up 4.42%. But remember, we should be having this sort of occurrence almost every single day until we reach the true price. But because we're faced with this short interest, because we're faced with the FTDs, we are struggling to do so. And the short interest, bear in mind, is only a very small percentage of what it actually should be. We've already talked about how it's self-reported. And not only that, we've talked about how all of these hidden offshore synthetics, whilst they should contribute to the short interest, but aren't actually reported because they are offshore. And so it just goes to show that whilst we're seeing the spike in short interest, remember that this is only the very minimum of the minimum. I always like to say I like to 10x the number what we're looking at, because I truly do believe that's where it should be. Now, Netflix losing the Paramount deal is a huge win for theaters. More box office demand means more foot traffic, more concession sales, and better content flow into AMC screens. And this is very, very important. Now, the reason why I say this is because if you take a look at this, iPic Theaters files Chapter 11, seeks sale of ownership in its second Chapter 11 since 2019 amid 2025 box office. So if you want to talk about having actual problems, and we're talking about this iPic Theaters to struggle in this economy, it then looking at contrast, it really shows how well AMC is operating. And what this is good is the fact that this is what we're looking at in terms of potential sales of theaters that AMC can be looking to purchase. And we already talked about how AMC want to obviously open up more positions. They've closed down some of their locations already, and they want to open up more. And this could be a thing. But it also goes to show that the fact that we are seeing firms failing in this industry, and AMC is not only surviving but thriving, it really gives you that contrast of what is actually going on. But the very fact we're looking at how, a bigger box office, and it talks about how AMC is operating, you can see why we talked about why this is very important and good for AMC. And bear in mind, if they have done this much to suppress AMC, just imagine what happens when the dam breaks. Once it breaks, the price only goes as high as we allow it. Remember that. The market cap doesn't matter if they're getting squeezed, they stand to lose infinite losses. And so this goes down to why we are being constantly suppressed and manipulated, because essentially the losses can be infinite for these short sellers. We've already talked about where we are looking to sell our shares. We talked about the exit price. And from that alone, you'll understand why the short sellers are worried. Not to mention, even without a squeeze, AMC should already be 10 times, 100 times where it is right now. Because of the fact that we have never seen true price discovery, we know that it's extremely undervalued. Now, no matter what happens, we know that firstly, AMC should be worth, again, tens or hundreds X of where we are right now. And then when we talk about a squeeze, people are not willing to be selling at 1,000. Potentially some are, but from what we've seen, the majority wants to sell in 5,000, 10,000, and obviously higher. And that's why the shorts are suppressing us. And that's why they're trying to play this long game. But they obviously are failing to do so, because there are so many different reasons for why this is happening. Firstly, they've been trying to suppress AMC. They've been trying to bankrupt AMC, but that's obviously not happening. Not only that, we're seeing other institutions buy into AMC, like Vanguard, who have increased their ownership of AMC once again. And so to those people who say that, AMC is not an investment, AMC doesn't have any potential, then explain why so many different firms are buying into AMC. If you don't want to look at Vanguard, you can look at all of these other firms that are buying. And not only that, you should be looking at also the firms who have been famous for shorting AMC to actually flip their positions to actually buy into AMC. We've already given multiple examples. We've seen Citadel buy into AMC and actually increase their long position. We've seen Goldman Sachs getting rid of 100% of their short positions and loaded up on shares and loaded up on calls. And these are just a few examples of what we talked about. So we are seeing how institutions are constantly and willingly buying and accumulating AMC. And this really just beats up all the media articles that are saying that people are selling, that people are staying away. Furthermore, if AMC pushed out all of their 2027 debt to 2030 and 2031, AMC Theaters is going to have positive earnings here on out through 2027, then how can we as shareholders go bankrupt? And it just goes to talk about the forecast of AMC's fundamentals. And this is something that we have been looking at. And just like what we've mentioned earlier with the examples of iPic Theaters and what we talked about with how the box office is only going to get bigger, these are optimal things you want to see for AMC. And these are why institutions realize the potential for AMC. But it doesn't stop there. So we obviously talk about how AMC is going to thrive in this industry. But you also have to remember their investments. You can see, when you see someone say AMC sold all of their HRAMC position, please inform that AMC still holds around 64,000 shares and over 1 million warrants with an exercise price of 10.68 per share. HRAMC is currently trading $48. So we've talked about, yes, AMC did miss out on a bigger profit, But selling what AMC sold allowed the company to essentially break even on its initial investment. And not only that, we are still in this position. We still hold shares and we hold warrants. The fact that they are able to exercise these and instantly sell at 48 should already show you guys where this is. But it doesn't stop there, because this is already a 4x of the warrant price. But when you look at what's going on right now, AMC has actually beaten earnings by 133% over analyst consensus. So if you want to look at some other insights of whether or not AMC price is going to go up, this is obviously a showcase of that. And so this is just going to make AMC's investments even bigger. It's going to make the returns even bigger. But then not only that, we see that AMC just moved from MSCI microcap to MSCI small cap. That means in the ETFs and index funds now have to own it. Passive money starts flowing in. And this is just showing another case of influx flowing into AMC, which corresponds to why HYMC, and it corresponds to why HYMC is going to go higher. And so going back to what we talked about here, with how AMC is profiting from this, not only are they in a 4x profit now, but they're due to see the price go up even higher, which will increase their investments even higher. Now, we've been talking about GameStop recently, and we talked about their acquisition. You can see Domo Capital expects acquisition news from GameStop, and it's why they're maintaining their entire GME position. So it obviously goes to show that this could be very, very big sort of acquisition going on. Now, there has been so many different rumors, Target, Best Buy, AMC, eBay, PayPal. There have been so many. And AMC could, of course, be something that will bring a big shockwave to the industry because of what's going on. Again, these are all rumors. I don't want to sell you guys a thing of what they're going to do, but these are something that should be looked around, that should be paying attention to, because we're already seeing how big institutions are paying attention to that as well. And amidst all of this, we're also seeing the cost to borrow available short shares that are rapidly decreasing. And this is because of what's going on. We see a range between 1.5 to 3 million, and it's now between 500,000 to 900,000. And these are all very important factors because it goes to show the desperateness by these funds. And just remember, they're not used to people buying billions of shares and holding. This is not normal for their algorithms that help them skim multi-billion dollars from hardworking investors. And this is why we've said that apes are beating these short sellers. As always, not a financial advice, so do take it as a grain of salt. Make sure to do your own due diligence and research, and I'll catch you guys next time.